Senator Marsha Blackburn, her and her colleagues have put forward a resolution to ban or freeze all the U.S. aid to Palestinians, and again, $100 million to Palestinians that, of course, we know at this point would be benefiting terrorists. She'll be joining us. I also want to talk to her about, kind of the feel with inside the U.S. Senate right now with the support. It seems like Democrats there are much more supportive as well. Just 8 days before the terror attacks in Israel, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said this. Let's play it for everybody.
What we said is we want to depressurize, de-escalate, and ultimately integrate the Middle East region. The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Jake Sullivan has been wrong on just about every foreign policy issue that he has encountered. And certainly, according to Bob Gates, you've got President Biden, who's been wrong on every foreign policy issue for the last 40 years. Look, Jake Sullivan was a part of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. He was part of the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. He has been very involved in this ransom payment to Iran, $6 billion. We all know you cannot appease these countries. Iran is a part of the axis of evil with Russia, China, North Korea. They are intent on destroying Israel and destroying the United States. And why in heaven's name this administration would continue to cajole and appease and send money to these bad actors who end up funding terrorism and funding their proxies like Hamas, like Hezbollah, to do their dirty deeds, it is beyond me. And what we have seen is, as you said, Jordan, who should be our ally, Egypt, that should be our ally. You saw Abbas. They're all canceling meetings with the President of the United States. Now, what kind of advice is Jake Sullivan giving? How is it that they are content to allow us to look weak on the global stage? And I don't understand where they are going with this. What I do know and what I fully understand is with this foreign policy, people do not know if they're an ally or an enemy. And our allies should never doubt that they are our ally. Our adversaries should fear us because they should know we are going to hunt them down when they do bad things to good people.
I also wanted to ask you about the $100 million of aid. We've talked about Ukraine aid before. We've talked about these questionable aid packages going back to Iran and some of those being frozen right now. But $100 million is still heading to the Gaza Strip that U.S. taxpayers are funding. I mean, this is the Biden administration. He gave a very strong speech, President Biden, in Israel. But it's always about, words are important, but actions are really what determines the outcomes and consequences. And the fact that $100 million is still, they think it's still a good decision to send to the Gaza Strip, to me, I mean, it's not just a head scratcher. It just seems wrong to send that kind of money to such an evil, a terrorist organization.
Well, we know that the money is ending up in the hands of Hamas. When you look at even this last week, what did they find Hamas doing? They were intercepting the aid coming into Gaza, and they were using that food, fuel, medical supplies, first aid kits. They were using it for the terrorists, for their Hamas troops, their terrorists. So if you send more money, they are going to take that money. So why would you do that? I mean, the UN Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which has been around for about 70 years, thank goodness President Trump cut the funding to that. Joe Biden re-upped the funding.
We now know that President Biden is going to address the nation tonight from the Oval Office, and usually those are very a moment of serious situation to take that time to address the American people. What do you expect that we're actually going to hear tonight?
I think he's going to try to sell his $100 billion aid package, which is $10 billion to Israel, more money for Ukraine, for Taiwan, and then money for big blue cities that are sanctuary cities that are now complaining about the open border and having illegal aliens coming to them.
Senator, at the end of the day, it does seem like in Washington, D.C., even with what's going on in the House, and maybe they're going to figure that out right now, hopefully today or tomorrow, at least temporarily. But it is nice to see that other than the squad, it seems like most Republicans and Democrats at least agree on this one issue of standing with Israel. Now, I would like to ask you this. Is that what we see publicly, or is it the same behind the scenes when you speak to those your colleagues in the Senate who are Democrats? I mean, I see Chuck Schumer with very strong language. I know a young member of Congress from Florida, Jared Moskowitz, who I disagree almost on everything, but is in my fraternity at GW. And we talk, and he's a very strong supporter of Israel. So are we finally starting to see, Senator Blackburn, the isolation of this squad-type groups, at least in our nation's capital? We saw the protests yesterday in the Hill. We've seen the protest on college campuses. That's one thing, but at least to isolate them in Congress.
Well, Jordan, if we had a House that had a speaker, and if they were organized, they could be on the floor right now doing a censure resolution against Tlaib and the squad members who refused to admit that it was not Israel. Israel did not bomb the hospital in Gaza. It was a Hamas rocket gone awry. And there's plenty of evidence around that now. So we hope that what we will see is groups like the squad will be isolated, especially when it comes to our nation's foreign policy, and that you will begin to see some more agreement that this country that we live in is worth the fight. Our freedom is worth the fight. We need to be strong. There should be peace through strength, and we should all agree on that.